Hello, and thank you for taking time this weekend to join us here on KREM 2 News. I'm Cody Proctor, and this is the KREM 2 News Week in Review. We know life gets busy, and it can be tough to keep up with all of the news. So let's get you updated on some of the headlines from this past week.
The text messages revealed in newly released court documents are between two surviving roommates identified by their initials DM and BF. They begin at around 4:22 a.m. the morning of the murders. DM texts, "I'm freaking out right now," and BF soon responds, saying, "Come to my room." The messages discuss the two being scared while at the scene. They also go on to show the two discussing someone wearing a ski mask. Their statements outside of court, the prosecution argues, is an example of what attorney Chris Bugbee says is known as a present tense impression. The prosecution is arguing the texts outline a timeline of events the night of the murders and should be admitted as evidence in the case.
An observation that a witness was making outside of court, but during the time that they're observing whatever it is that they are describing.
Bugbee is a criminal justice attorney in Spokane and practices in Washington and Idaho. He's not connected to this case, but agreed to talk to us to provide some analysis. He says this would not make the text messages hearsay and would be taken into evidence. Court documents also show Kohberger's defense team arguing against the death penalty if he is found guilty. At the same time, the state is arguing the recording and transcript of the 911 call made when Xana Kernodle was initially found dead at the scene should also be brought into evidence. It reads a person on the line saying, "One of the roommates who's passed out and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up." The transcript goes on to read, "They saw some man in their house last night." Yeah. Judge John Judge in Latah County ruled the recording can be used as evidence before the trial was relocated to Ada County. The defense argues the evidence was not made available to them and gets in the way of Kohberger's right to a fair trial.
Their argument that they've hid all the discovery in a haystack and that therefore it's not available to us even though it's been provided, that is a legitimate argument and is something that I think the state ought to be worried about.
An argument Bugbee says could lead to a potential delay in the trial if the death penalty is still an option.
If the only way short of dismissing the petition for death, if the only other way to preserve Mr. Kohberger's rights is to give the defense more time, you may see another continuance.
Yeah.
Inside a basement Spokane office, challenging conversations are happening.
What's her often harder?
For a decade, the Family Impact Network has handled the tough cases in child welfare.
Yep, this is why we are here. So we were created by the legislature, we're in statute.
But now, with Washington looking to cut budgets statewide, the Department of Children, Youth, and Families has identified Finn for possible cuts, meaning, says Shannon Selland, maybe reducing their services.
And another possibility would be that, yes, we were eliminated. That's all a real possibility.
Finn contracts through DCYF as a network administrator for Central and Eastern Washington, basically the connecting point between social workers, child welfare services, and families.
Kids need to be with family as soon as possible, if not right from immediately being removed from their family unit.
Selland says their tough work of handling travel and billing logistics and about 10,000 referrals a year means families with CPS cases stay connected. For kids in out-of-home care, family visitation often happens within a day. Selland says that could change if Finn goes away.
Doing this exercise is deeply challenging. There's no good thing or place to go to put on a list when we're thinking about reduction.
DCYF says its budget and Finn's future is ultimately up to the state legislature. But if that funding is eliminated, the agency would continue to provide these services the same way it does on the west side of the state, contracting directly with service providers.
Those referrals to service providers for visitation and combined in-home would go straight from social workers in the field to the providers in the area.
And as a former social worker, Selland knows what a lift that could be for already overwhelmed workers.
Another reason why we work so hard is that we don't want social workers to have to do this. Do they sometimes? Yeah, They do, but we really don't want that to be the case.
DCYF says final decisions from lawmakers and the outcome for Finn's work could come by the end of April. Shannon Mowdy, KREM 2 News.
School districts would be required to either upgrade security or improve emergency communications under Alyssa's Law. It's named in honor of Alyssa Aladef. On Valentine's Day 2018, a gunman killed 17 students and staff at Marjorie Stoneham Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida.
Alyssa was just 14 years old, a bright, fierce, and passionate young girl who dreamed of becoming a lawyer, a leader, someone who would change the world.
Ever since her daughter's death, Alyssa Aladef's mother, Lori, has tried to change state laws.
I want to make sure that all students here in Washington are safe.
Since establishing her Make Our Schools Safe nonprofit organization, 7 states now require all school staffers to have mobile panic buttons to alert authorities of emergencies.
A total school lockdown can be triggered by any staff member on the school's campus by repeatedly pressing the crisis alert badge.
The Washington version of Alyssa's Law would require districts to make at least one security upgrade, adding the panic buttons, live on-campus cameras for police to instantly access video, remote-controlled doors, or two-way communication radios for staffers. The bill's sponsor wants districts to choose what's best for them, but says more does need to be done.
Because we send our kids there every day. I have kids I have grandkids now in the public school system, and I want them to be safe, and I want other students to be safe as well.
On that tragic day, I was texting Alyssa. I told Alyssa to run and hide, that help was on the way. But unfortunately, that help didn't get there fast enough.
Alyssa's mother would like to think a panic button would have saved her daughter's life, but she is confident her daughter's story will save others.
Absolutely. I live for Alyssa. I'm Alyssa's voice because her voice was silenced on that horrific day, and I know she's watching and cheering me on.
This bill has already passed out of the Senate. Today was the first hearing in front of House of Representative members. The bill's sponsor is optimistic it will pass, thanks in part to the advocacy of Alyssa's mother. In Olympia, Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
KREM 2 News Week in Review. We know life gets busy and it can be tough to keep up with all of the news. So let's get you updated on some of the headlines from this past week. As we go to break, here's a check of your weekend forecast. Welcome back to the KREM 2 News Week in Review. Before we get back to this week's headlines, we want to remind you that you can get the latest news and weather forecasts anytime you want on KREM 2 Plus. It's our streaming app you can watch on your TV, and best of all, it's free. We hope you'll check it out, but now let's get back to the weekend review.
Spokane County Commissioners voted to help Spokane Treatment and Recovery Services. That money will go towards buying their existing building, hoping to grow their space for care and the people they serve.
This is the sobering unit, this area right here.
Ryan Kent shows where substance abuse patients of Spokane Treatment and Recovery Services, or STARS, are able to eat and socialize with others. He's the executive director of STARS, and he says the job provides unpredictable challenges.
Being able to be flexible, the behavioral health field is constantly changing.
Kent says that flexibility is going to get easier soon. Spokane County Commissioners voted unanimously on Tuesday to assist in funding a contract for STARS to buy the facility and upgrade the building's maintenance as well as their services. This includes adding in a 16-bed facility for patients in their care. They currently have 38 beds for withdrawal management and 6 additional for people needing less intensive care. The county voted on providing $775,000 towards what Kent says is ultimately a near $6 million purchase. This investment provides enough funds on STAR's end for the Washington State Department of Commerce to draw up a contract on 2 separate grants Kent says the nonprofit now qualifies for.
What the county did is they made it easier. They made it easier on us, and they also made it possible.
Ken says after all deals are finalized, the nonprofit will not only be able to get more beds, but also have funding to help adapt to different challenges they face when dealing with an intoxicated patient. It's a service Ken says is a rarity in Spokane.
You have to wait until you're no longer intoxicated before most places will admit you into their program.
Now, Ken says with a little more time, STARS will grow as a unique treatment option in Spokane for years to come.
It will be a 10-year commitment to the community of Spokane to provide services, a vast array of services for that period of time, and then we intend to continue on past that.
Ken says he anticipates a draft of a contract between STARS and the State Department of Commerce within the next month. Connor McAvoy, KREM 2 News.
Well, this all started Wednesday afternoon after SPD says a South Hill bank employee called 911 when a man in a ski mask came inside. SPD says officers were responding to that first call when they got a second call for help from another bank.
Never robbed me.
That's Cody Burgess, now facing charges for robbery and eluding police in a stolen car.
This incident's pretty concerning. It sounds like he was casing multiple banks on the South Hill.
Spokane's police department says Burgess was arrested Wednesday afternoon after employees at 2 different banks called 911. Court records show one of the targeted spots was Umpqua Bank on South Grand. Though he never asked for money or showed a weapon, police later found one they say Burgess dropped as he ran away.
He had a replica BB gun with him at the time. It looks like he was getting ready to rob a bank, or he's at least taken a substantial step in that direction.
SPD says as officers responded to the first call for help, an employee at another bank called 911, giving police a description of the suspect's car. SPD says it was stolen. Burgess was later spotted by witnesses throwing off a jacket and his gun as he ran into the Touchmark Senior Facility.
Very concerning issues there, which do raise issues of public safety, including his attempts to elude, which involved him running into a retirement home.
That's where police arrested him. Burgess's public defender asked for his charges to be reduced to attempted robbery.
It does not seem like Mr. Burgess completed the full act or charge of robbery.
The judge declined and set bond at $75,000. The prosecutor says Burgess has 16 adult felonies. Our check of his record shows many of those are for identity theft and stealing. Shannon Mowdy, KREM 2 News.
Thank you for watching the KREM 2 News Week in Review. I'm Cody Proctor. It's been a busy week across the Inland Northwest, so let's catch you up on some of the stories you might have missed.
We understand that decisions we make impact people's lives, and we do not take that lightly.
Governor Bob Ferguson says some of his suggestions are about efficiency, like eliminating 2 helicopters from the state's wildfire fighting fleet already scheduled to be phased out, or closing down a currently unused portion of the state's sex offender facility. But cutting $4 billion would have a human toll, too. 1,000 state positions would be eliminated. Most state employees would need to take 1 unpaid day off every month for 2 years. And new programs in most agencies would be delayed and or see funding decreases in coming years. For example, food bank subsidies that shot up thanks to federal COVID funding over the pandemic would be reduced.
That just seemed to me, given a budget shortfall, would I want to do that? If there wasn't a budget shortfall, of course I wouldn't do that, right? But look, we're not going to tax our way out of this thing. Not going to happen. $15 billion is a lot of money.
4-year colleges face cuts that could increase tuition, says Western Washington professor Bill Line.
What the governor's plan is saying is that 4-year higher education is only for rich kids.
We're already in crisis in long-term care.
Claire Belfi Rice works at an Olympia nursing home and says her residents and coworkers need more support from the state, not less.
Do I change this person's brief or do I brush their teeth? Because I don't have time to do it all, no matter how hard I work, no matter how fast I walk, no matter how efficient I get.
Budget writers from both parties say they appreciate the governor's suggestions. Republicans don't think the cuts go far enough. Democrats fear cuts too deep would hurt the state. In Olympia, Drew Mickelson, KREM 2 News.
During his first address to Congress, President Donald Trump said government databases list more than 19 million people older than 100 years old, many who still receive Social Security.
We're also identifying shocking levels of incompetence and probable fraud in the Social Security program for our seniors.
Using these sources, here's what we can verify. Data from the Social Security Administration shows nearly 90,000 beneficiaries older than 99 years old currently receive payments. That's fewer than the 100,000 living in the U.S., according to the census. Just last month, the acting Social Security Administrator said the millions being referred to are people with a Social Security number, but no recorded death date, not necessarily people getting checks. A 2023 Inspector General report backs that up, finding almost no one whose deaths weren't recorded were actually receiving payments. Social Security policy automatically stops payments to anyone born 115 years ago until they're proven to still be alive. So we can verify there are not 19 million people older than 100 still getting Social Security checks. With your Verify, I'm Courtney Robinson.
Before we wrap up this edition of the KREM 2 News Week in Review, we have one more story you might have missed this past week.
Ideas for legislation can come from citizens, lobbyists, even department agency heads. But for one state senator, Senate Bill 5375 is personal.
I want to acknowledge that this is an emotional topic for many, myself included.
Speeches on the Senate floor can get personal, like Senator Noel Frame's on Friday.
Children need trusted adults. They need to know that if they tell somebody they're being abused, like I told my teacher in the 5th grade that I was being abused, that they can trust that that person will make it stop.
She's backing a bill to add clergy to the list of mandatory abuse reporters, so religious leaders would need to contact the state if they learned a child was being abused, just like those in the medical field, law enforcement, and educators. When Senator Frame needed help as a child, she went to her teacher.
That is what Mrs. McAuliffe at Maple Grove Middle School in Battleground, Washington did for me as a 10-year-old girl. And I hope all of you will ask members of our faith communities to do the same so that those children can trust them.
This bill is really about setting up the framework so that a pastor has to choose whether they are going to obey God's law, or are they going to choose to obey man's law?
Opponents like Senator Leonard Christian say the state should not get involved in religious policies.
This is about putting the framework in place to put pastors in prison.
I was abused by a teenage cousin.
Senator Frame says the state has an obligation to protect children everywhere in the state.
This isn't fun for anybody to have to bring up what's happened to them in the past, but it's important that people tell these stories, myself included, so people understand the impact of what it means to not have this bill in place and why it's so important that we finally pass it.
The Archdiocese of Seattle testified against this bill earlier in the session, saying it would force priests to violate Catholic Church policies. The bill now heads to the House, where Senator Frame likes its chances. In Olympia, Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
Thank you for joining us for the KREM 2 News Week in Review. Keep it here for more news and weather updates throughout the weekend. I'm Cody Proctor. Thanks for watching.